Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. First of all, I want to say that we had a very good study group last night. I really enjoyed it. I love the discussions that we had last night regarding so many of those questions, and we were able to take a deep dive into how each of those questions are worded and also finding the best answer to them. But these two terms are like the bane of my existence, and I know they are for a lot of other people. So I thought that I would just take this time to discuss in depth these two terms and what they could actually mean regarding the exam, right? Regarding looking at them in answer responses, how they use these terms in answer responses. When are they considered a good response and when they are not considered a good response? So, first things first, let's look at normalize. When we see that term, it's like, I think somebody said last night in the study group, it's pretty. It's like this really pretty term that we like and we go for because it's meant to be looked at as like it's positive, right? But when is the term normalize considered a best response, right? Building rapport, yes. A person that feels anxious, a person that is feeling like they're broken, yes. Reducing stigma is going to be one of those main goals. Defensiveness, finding strengths, whether you are working with them in the beginning or when you're just like, okay, well, this happened to me or whatever. Okay, let's normalize that because I don't want you to feel like it's something wrong with the way that you're feeling, right? If it is something that is like normal to what's going on in like a developmental stage, something that's happening with like a life stressor that may occur, then yes, let's normalize it, right? There's change that's happening, such as what? Terminating therapy. Being anxious at the end of therapy when you've been with your therapist for what? 2, 3, 4 years. Is that like a normal feeling that a person could have? Yes. It's expected. You're going to be now without this person that you have had for your support for so long, right? However, there are many times when normalize is not going to be your best response, and you need to pay attention to that. So if you read what I have here, and feel free, I can get the PDFs for it. I can even post this PowerPoint in the group. I'm okay with that because I want us to all be on the same page when it comes to this. There are examples that are listed, right? And I think this was I think I've used some of these examples before. You know, if you have a couple, or if you have like siblings or whatever, we fight way more than any other couple. So now it's like, am I doing some comparison? Here I'm comparing myself to this other couple. But can you normalize that, conflict, is normal in couples, but then you want to do what? There's something unique about them, right? Because now it's like, well, we fight way more than another couple. Fighting, is this something that happens in a relationship? Yes, it is. Can we normalize that and then explore it more? Yes, we can. You take a woman that just had a baby that's coming to you in therapy, who's struggling with just being a first-time mom. Is that like normal? Can we normalize that? Yes. You are a new parent. Of course you feel overwhelmed. Same thing can go for a father for the first time. Same thing. Yes. A teenager says, I get nervous when I'm talking in class because I think that, no one else likes me. Should we normalize that in social settings? He's anxious? Yes, we can. However, there are also exceptions when it comes to these. When is the word normalize not a good response? This is what we talked about last night. If you get a question, a scenario, vignette, whatever the case may be, that is mentioning something about suicide, do not choose an answer response that tells you to normalize anything, because then it means you've just ignored that this client is suicidal. You can't do that. You cannot normalize suicidal ideation. You need to assess for safety. There's no way else around that. A client that is coming to you saying that they've been sexually assaulted, you cannot normalize that. What are you normalizing when this person is in a crisis? They were just sexually assaulted, raped, molested, whatever the case may be. What are you normalizing? When you need to check and see emotionally, are they safe right now? You can't normalize it. If there's escalation, triangulation, just like they have this, like there's some type of other factors that you need to be paying close attention to, normalizing it is not enough, because normalizing something means you just ignored a red flag in the vignette. You can't do it. If there's a problem, crisis, something that is legal, something that is unethical that could possibly be going on in that vignette, normalizing it is too weak. It's not enough information. It means that you are ignoring the red flags. You can normalize when it's early on in the session with the client, when you're building rapport, when you're trying to reduce shame, reduce those stigmas that a person may be having. Yes, you may normalize, but it is not a best response when someone's safety is at risk. There are some escalation patterns that needs to be addressed, termination phases, middle phases of things that's going on that should not be going on. You cannot normalize it. Okay? Now, I have studied so many of these questions. I have lost count of how many questions I have studied. I have never seen an answer response that tells you to encourage your client to be correct. Never. I have yet to come across an answer that says that. But that does not mean that it's not true. It can be correct. And I did this myself. I put like some questions in ChatGPT just to see what would happen, just to be like, okay, I get what they're doing here. Like, okay, well, why this question? Why this word for this direct answer? When we tell our clients, like, oh, encourage them to do something, it's more like now it's motivation. We are, wanting them to find their strengths. We are empowering them, right? We want them to gain more insight, right? Something that is early on in session, right? Sharing of goals, interventions that has worked. You want to encourage them to keep doing it. However, there are times when the term encourage is absolutely incorrect and you should stay away from it. You may encourage your client to continue practicing new strategies. If this intervention is working, I encourage you to continue to do it. I say it all the time and I stand by it. Unless you see an answer response that says encourage or normalize and the other three are not viable, if that's the best answer out of the four, then yes. But I stand by what I said. On these mock exams that I have taken, the thousands of questions I've studied, encourage has never been a best answer for any question that I have come across. Not meaning that it can't be. It can be. But be very, very careful when you are choosing to pick an answer response that has you to encourage your client, your family, or your couple to do something. This is when encourage is not best. Just like I think it was a question last night. Encourage her to go to the hospital and call 911. No. Every time I see the word encourage in an answer response, it makes me think about I'm giving this client this option. They can do it or they don't have to, especially when it comes to a crisis situation. If I have a client that has been sexually assaulted, raped, molested, however you want to look at it, I am not a doctor. So you're sitting in front of me saying that you were sexually assaulted, raped, molested, whatever the case may be. I need to be referring you to something that is going to be able to help you in that area, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a gynecologist. I can't give you an STD test. I can't check down there and see if something is actually going wrong. I need to direct you to where you need to go. In a question where a client has been sexually assaulted, raped, a kid is coming to you saying that they've been molested, stay away from the word encourage. I bet money on it, the answer is going to be wrong. And I put money on it, the answer will not be correct. You never encourage a suicidal client, an abused child, or someone who is in active danger. You need to be doing what first? You need to first be assessing. That's the first thing that you need to be doing. Creating a safety plan, reporting it if it's child abuse, making sure you're going to put them in the right direction in which they need to be going in. But you should never encourage them. It is incorrect to choose the word encourage when you know that a client is bringing up something such as, I feel like I shouldn't live anymore. Or I feel like I'll just be better off without being alive. Stay away from an answer response that has you to encourage. Encourage what? Encourage them to kill themselves? No. You need to be choosing a response that has you doing what? Assessing them. If there are theory-specific interventions that has been mentioned, especially when it comes to the middle phase of therapy, and I'm glad that I put this in, especially the middle phase of therapy, encouraging a client to do something, it's not enough information, because like I said, every time I see the word encourage, it makes me think, should they do it or should they not do it? I'm the therapist, right? Be very careful when it comes to the word encourage. I cannot remember whoever you was that said it last night on the study meet. It's too pretty. If it's too pretty, it sounds too nice. Sometimes it ain't the best answer. But if it is the only valuable answer that you think is the best out of the other three, then grab at it. But make sure you had enough evidence to show that that word encourage or normalize is one of the best answer responses out of the four. Do not ignore red flags in the vignette. Do not ignore that this client is saying that they rather not live here. Don't ignore that this child is saying to you that my mother beat me really bad. My father beat me really bad. A client sitting in front of you saying that they were just sexually assaulted. They were just raped. Be very mindful of choosing the word encourage. It is rarely the best answer. Rarely. And I'm resting on that. I have yet to see, I cannot tell you any answer that I have seen that encourage was the best answer response. And I go through those AATBS questions like I drink water daily. I'm looking at them daily. Every time I see encourage come up on the answer response, it's never been right. And I'm not lying to you. I would never lie to you. It is rarely the best answer unless safety has been addressed, assessment is already done, and it fits in that phase or that theory that is within that question. Okay? Let's do some practice questions. A family comes to therapy reporting that their teenage son often refuses to follow rules, leading to shouting matches at home. In session, the son rolls his eyes and ignores his parents, requests while they become more demanding. The family asks the therapist for help managing these escalating conflicts. Now, what is the therapist's most appropriate response? So let's go back. So the family is coming to therapy. The son is refusing to follow rules. He's leading to freaking shouting matches at home. So we got a lot of conflict that's going on right here, right? And the son is disrespectful. He's sitting there rolling his eyes, and the parents are just becoming even more demanding, right? What is the most appropriate response? Now, when we see appropriate response, it's like what? We need to find something that is going to be immediately that needs to be done right then and right there, okay? They are in therapy, okay? A says, normalize the family struggles as a typical part of adolescence. Okay, there's that word again. right? B says, redirect the interaction by coaching the parents to set clear, consistent limits and avoid escalating demands. Okay, I like the sound of that one. C says, explore the parents' own experiences as teenagers to increase empathy for their son. Okay. D says, encourage the family to ignore the problematic behaviors, and they're gonna eventually they're gonna just disappear. They're gonna resolve on their own. That's what D is saying, right? So, let's go back. A says, normalize the family struggles as a typical part of adolescence. Okay, here it is again. So now, systemically in this vignette, we have some what? We got some conflict that's going on. We've got some disabling sequences that keep happening. It's a pattern that keeps happening. So why are we normalizing that? You want this family to leave your office and go home and still be dealing with the same nonsense of my son being disrespectful to me, screaming, shouting, and yelling at me? That's what happens when you would normalize that. You see how that sounds when you choose the word normalize? D says encourage the family to ignore it. Now, here it is again. Again, when I get home, my son is going to still be screaming at me. We're going to be stuck in these same disabling sequences because my therapist told me to just normalize it and encourage to do this. Right? Sounds silly, right? C says explore the parents' own experiences. That's digging in the past, and we don't need to be digging in the past because this is happening right then and right now. So C is automatically out. B says redirect the interaction by coaching the parents to set clear, consistent limits to avoid the escalating demands. That's you right there presently working with this family to help with the conflict and the escalating demands that's going on in the family. And that is going to be so much more support than having them normalize the screaming matchings or encourage them to just ignore the problematic behaviors, and eventually it'll resolve on their own. B is the best answer. If it has some systemic issues that are going on, do not choose normalize, do not choose encourage. A new mother comes to therapy reporting that she often feels exhausted and tearful in the weeks following her baby's birth. She worries that she may be going crazy and is embarrassed to admit these feelings. What is the therapist's most appropriate initial response? A new mom is coming in. She's exhausted. She's a first-time mom. She's exhausted. She feels embarrassed to even admit these feelings in the first place, right? What is the therapist's most appropriate initial response? Now, A is just out there, so we're just going to get rid of it. Nothing in this vignette is telling us that she needs to be hospitalized, so get rid of A. B says normalize her experience as a common adjustment reaction after childbirth. I like that, but let's look at the other ones. C says explore the mother's childhood experience of being parented. Again, why are we going back to the past when presently we have this mom that's feeling embarrassed about how she's feeling? No need to dig in the past. D says encourage her to ignore the feelings until they subside. Again, and as crazy as these answer responses may sound, they put them on the exam just like this. Encourage her to ignore the feelings? Absolutely not. So is this something that we can normalize? Yes, this is something that we can normalize because why? We are going to break down that stigma that she has, that shame that she is having because she's embarrassed to admit these feelings. It is nothing wrong with the way that she is feeling, and we don't want her to feel like it is something wrong with the way that she's feeling. So we are going to normalize her experience as a common adjustment reaction after childbirth. B is your best answer. A couple reports they have made small improvements in communicating but feel discouraged because they still fall back into old patterns. What is the therapist's most appropriate response? Now, I'm seeing normalize and I'm seeing encourage. And I promise you, I didn't do this stuff myself. They populated this for me just like this when I put it in ChatGPT. And even though they are simple and easy, it's still a good way for you to just learn through it and recognize it. Normalize relapse is part of change and leave it there. Again, as crazy as it sounds, they will put stuff like this on there. So be prepared. Be prepared for it. Normalizing relapse, right? They have made small improvements in communicating, but they feel discouraged because they still fall back into the old patterns, right? Normalize relapse. Okay, let's just make it normal. It's okay. Because when we normalize it, then what happens? What do you do then? What happens when you normalize it? You just move on from there? B says, encourage the couple to continue practicing their new skills, highlighting the progress that's being made. You see how that's lovely. You see how beautiful that sounds? C says, redirect them to, okay, again, with the childhood experiences. We are presently. We don't need to be digging in the past, right? D says, challenge them to avoid slipping into old dynamics altogether. We're not going to challenge them. They already feel discouraged. So we need to be doing what? Breaking down that shame that they are having. They already feel discouraged. Breaking down this feeling that they is, if like, you know, I'm still falling back to old patterns. Is it going to get better? What's going to happen? No. So we're gonna encourage them. You have these skills. Let's highlight some of that progress that you've been making, and let's lean on that and move forward, right? I can encourage them to do that, right? There's no suicidal ideation in here. There's no systemic conflict and stuff that's going on. So I can encourage them. Keep doing what you've been doing. It's just, you know, you're just falling back. It's okay, but keep doing what you're doing. We're not going to normalize a relapse as a part of change. No. How is that a part of change? How? Because they're going back. We don't want them to go back. We want them to keep moving forward and making the progress, right? A client says, sometimes I think everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. What is the therapist's most appropriate response? A says, encourage the client to think more positively about their situation. Now, remember what we said about that word encourage when you have some suicidal ideation that's going on? I've just ignored that this client is telling me sometimes I think everyone would be better off if I'm not here. But yet and still, I'll encourage you though. No. You see how that sounds? B says, conduct a thorough suicide assessment and ensure safety planning. Okay. C says, normalize suicidal thoughts as common. Now, and as crazy as this sound, you never normalize suicidal thoughts. You assess. You see how, you know, what their risk level is, but you're not going to normalize suicidal thoughts, right? We got to make sure our clients are safe. D says, explore past coping strategies. Again, with the past. We're not in the past. We are right now. We are right here and right now, right? We need to conduct a thorough suicide risk assessment and ensure safety planning, because I got a client that's telling me sometimes I feel like I'm better off if I wasn't here. And how can I encourage that before I even make sure that they don't have a plan or an intent or an access to means? That's what we have to do. Be very mindful when it comes to the words normalize, encourage. Pay attention to what is being presented in the vignette before you start looking at those two beautiful words written in those answer responses. Do not ignore the red flags in the vignette. If you ignore the red flags in the vignette and you're choosing normalize and you're choosing encourage, there's something else that is going on that you have just now ignored, that you have put your client in harm's way, which puts your license at risk. I hope this made so much sense to everybody. If you still do not understand why encourage and normalize are often not the best answer responses to choose, please leave me a comment, leave me a message, do whatever the case may be, because I do not want to steer you wrong. I only want to make all of this information that I just gave you make sense. If you were not in my study group yesterday, Thursday, if you was not in my study group last night, there will be a study group next Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Central Time is the regular time, but I did 6:30 yesterday. If I have a client, it will change, but I encourage each and every one of you to join. If you do not have the link, please send me a message or whatever. If you're not in my Facebook group and you're not on Facebook, let me know. I will provide the link to you. I encourage each and every one of you to join the study meet so that you can be part of the discussion, so that we can all cross this finish line together. Alrighty, everyone, have a very good night.